There we go.
Got it. All right. So I will convene the meeting with the previous board meetings, and here we will start the vote. I can see Martin. I can't hear you, Martin.
Yep.
Okay. Grant.
Yes.
Owen. Owen, we can't hear you if you're speaking. I think he's on phone. We'll come back to him. Bill.
Yes.
Sharif, we don't have it on the screen, but let's go ahead and go to Avi.
Yep.
Glenn.
Yes.
And myself, yes. We don't have Jubin here as well. Now we can, Andrew, we can start the proposal for this month meeting.
Sure.
Agenda.
Okay.
You want me to stop sharing?
Yes, please. I'll just go through the
Sure.
by the okay, share. Okay.
Thank you.
So hopefully everyone can see that, and I'll just take you through it. This is the more visual style of board reporting that I'd like to continue doing. With the AppSec virtual, we haven't had a chance to get the events in order yet, but I will work with Kelly and Lauren to provide a better visual version of the events report, which is actually linked. I hope everyone's had a chance to review that. Okay, we are still gold with GuideStar, which is fantastic because that's how we get found through YouTube and also Amazon Smile. We are working to reclaim our Amazon Smile account and make sure that it's all up to date. We're talking probably tens of dollars a month, not the next million. And so when we actually talk about next year's budget, we definitely need to think about how do we raise $250,000? How do we raise $1 million, rather than worrying about making sure that things are actually, you know, we're getting $5 here or $5 there. Okay. Oh, hang on. Something's happening and I'm just going to silence my phone. Okay, so our operating reserves are in fine shape. We're actually doing better than we've done for the last 12 months. Tom will go through that. We're up to 13.6 months at this moment. That's actually quite healthy. Most nonprofits, anything above 6 months is good. In cash assets, we've again increased our overall balance. Not so far as the budget was saying, but certainly it's up there, but that's partially due again, and Tom will explain, but essentially when the amounts of money were accrued or recognized for the 20th anniversary. Also AppSec Virtual moved a month back, so we're going to see a late surge, I think. We're doing okay. Let's just keep an eye on the ball. It's really important not to overspend. It's really important to make sure that we're trying to rebuild our cushion here in case there's any further setbacks. Year-to-date net income, we are second month in a row as profitable, which is fantastic. This is exactly where we need to be, and we need to continue this path. And the only way to do that is to keep a lid on expenses, and also to make sure that whatever we spend our money on advances the mission and doesn't add to recurring overhead. We'll talk about that a little bit when we do the 22 budget, but essentially if we can keep recurring expenses down, or make sure that every expense has an income stream, which is the overall goal, then essentially we should be fine. But to my mind, we need to keep an eye on the ball, because there's going to be some big bills coming out in January and May, using up nearly a quarter of our cash reserves just for AppSec EU alone. So it's going to be really important. So Owen, we're going to be basically needing to organise a Dublin conference committee, just in case the staff cannot get there, because we need Dublin to fire on every single cylinder. if you wish to ask Kelly anything about events, one of the things that she asked the staff this morning was the numbers. And I think that would be a very important thing. What sort of taste is it in Europe at the moment for attending in person? And
So there was a security conference which was held last week. I don't know the numbers, but it was done with kind of distancing in mind. Which so that was probably the first security conference in person. But they did it in the Aviva Stadium, which like there's hell of a lot of space. So like the convention center is quite big, but you will like it's very hard in to avoid people basically because of the structure of the rooms and stuff like that. The numbers in Ireland itself are like close to 6,000 a day. So it's very potential that there's another lockdown coming down the line. But saying that, we don't know. Like they're starting to impose more restrictions, but yeah, we're just unsure about, or there hasn't been anything that's come to light. So everybody's been advised not to go into work and all that kind of stuff, to work from home. So similar kind of things that were happening before. So with that, there's probably less of a want for people to go to an in-person conference. So we're going to have to really think about this one and see whether, or like what's the best for the foundation. Like we can go ahead and try and organize, but like given the fact that the numbers are high again, I know it's a good while away, but it's very hard to just lock something down. But like I know I mentioned it probably about 2 months ago that we were already late, and we're getting later and later. Now I have a call with Kelly, or I'm catching up with Kelly after this, just to discuss it. But yeah, there's a lot to do. Like both myself and Martin have been through it a lot over the last number of years, and like we don't have anything set up or anything started for the conference apart from having a venue.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's more than half a year from now, and I think we definitely have to plan it. We see it's going, the numbers going up everywhere in Europe, right? It's every country, if you have measures or not. We have just canceled this week's Benelux Day, postponed to March. And when you look at the historical data, you see that after winter we come out with better signs. Then we have the winter holidays, and after winter it goes down again. So aiming for June, when you look in the past 2 years, it looks actually quite good, because then you had the wave after the ski holidays back down again. So it looks like that will be beneficial. But nobody can predict the future, because we have to. But I think definitely we have to go ahead and plan.
Yep, Glenn.
Well, I was just thinking that at least in Belgium, they were more relaxed when you had like outdoor events, right? You could hold still in dire times, like, I don't know, 500 people together at a meetup if it was outside, right? I normally think like indoor events and stuff like that, then the number was, I think, like 100 or 150, something like that. So maybe this could also maybe food for thought or a strategy to plan somewhere an outside event.
It was quite similar in Ireland from a rural perspective. The only thing is that if you're coming to Ireland, like you could get all 4 seasons in the same day. So like it's not really the best thing to do at an outdoor conference.
Yeah, no, I agree. We did this event in Goa for OWASP, actually, where we had nice weather and it was sunny. So there it worked, right? But yeah, if we really want to do an event together that has a high probability that it actually can go through, well, there are countries also in Europe where it is really warm, right? And especially around that time, and we can do an outdoor event. I just wanted to mention it, as a possible,
Okay, so I do see a number of people asking for bandana.
Right. Actually, I'm on the same lines because NullCon, which happens in India, because India has so many restrictions right now. They were thinking of having it in September, but they could not because the surge again happened. Even though the things are slowing down here, but the NullCon team is planning to host NullCon in Berlin this year. Like totally contrary to, they have been doing this in India for like 10 years, and now they're going to be doing it in Berlin because they
Wow.
have less restrictions. Yeah. So they just announced yesterday.
Martin?
Yeah, in Germany, the numbers go the same direction now. As I said, it's everywhere. We cannot predict the future. I think we definitely should plan for the AppSec as we intended in Dublin. But I think that Glenn's idea is actually quite good to think in general, because we also have the hacker community like this Chaos Computer Camp, or in the Netherlands, it has a different name every year. The past was SHA, now it will be MCH. So you can maybe organize, and maybe a bit like we did in the past in Portugal, different like a more festival style, outdoor style event. That might be an interesting option, alternative to the other ones.
So what I would suggest is, this sounds like an interesting conversation. What I'd suggest is our $94,000 deposit is due on the 5th of January. If the board wishes to discuss this in further, we're obviously not at the peak of the Christmas surge, but we sort of do need to pay something early in the new year. And obviously the new board won't have been signed in by then. It may make sense to actually have a longer session on this in December. What do you think?
It might be worth actually having an edit course discussion on it. I don't think that it's entirely valuable to use this meeting for it, and it's going to take I think it's going to be a sizable conversation, because we kind of need to make a decision, and also understand things like penalties and so on. So if we were to cancel or reschedule for later on in the year or something like that, do we have penalties? Is there any benefit to doing so, and the potential risks?
So Owen, since you're meeting with Kelly, can I get you to lead that conversation for the board and come back to the board with what your suggestions are next month or earlier if you need?
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's an entire board conversation.
Absolutely.
It's not just me and Kelly making a decision. I think a lot of the information probably has to come from the contract that we have with the convention centre, and that needs to be brought by staff to the board for discussion and understanding of how much money we're likely to lose if we weren't going to go ahead with it. And if we were to take a stab at it, how much money we could lose if there's not an uptake in the conference. So and then, like, I guess solutionizing it, like so we could do a hybrid event similar to what you were talking about from AppSec Australia. So half in person, half online might work. Just reduce costs. So we just need to maybe understand what the potential options are.
Sure. Okay. I'll just touch base with Kelly later to get the contract shared with the board.
Cool.
Okay. I just want to continue, and obviously Tom's got his coming up, so he can talk about these. Okay, we're at 5,361 members, up 305 from last month. Again, healthy uptake in the membership bundle with the AppSec virtual. So that's quite good. The downside of all of this greatness is everyone will need to renew through next year. So we need to plan out membership drives to make sure that we keep this up. Part of that is to increase the number of member benefits, and we've got a couple coming along. We're actually going to be announcing one in December. In fact, there's like 3 or 4 in the pipeline. And to that end, I do believe we need to come up with a partnership model. It is becoming incredibly popular, and I don't want to be a gatekeeper and say you can be a partner, but you can't be a partner. There needs to be sort of an equal vendor neutral approach that doesn't overwhelm our members with communications, and also provides value to both the partner and OWASP members. Sharif?
Yeah, is there a way of reducing this risk? Sorry, I noticed my camera is pointing the wrong one. Is there a way that we can have auto renewal done even for yearly, that set reminders or so forth, but so that we don't constantly have to chase for them to auto renew themselves from that perspective?
Auto renew is actually an option in Stripe today. I will have to get you a number of how many people have actually taken it up. I do know that Bandana, for example, you actually had some difficulties with the auto renew when you were changing over to lifetime. So the reality is, I know that some members do choose to do so, but we experienced a small dip during the AppSec Cali registration drive from folks who got it for free the previous year. So it's just a matter of, we just need to be cognizant of when the peaks and when we actually had some additional members coming through, and make sure that we run membership drives around that time, just simply to make sure that we're keeping on top of it and we can keep this revenue stream coming.
Yeah, it would be good to see if you can, I know the data is a little bit hard, but if you can have a list of people who opted not to auto renew and that their membership is about to expire. So it's at least focused on the right people.
We do actually have 30, 14, 7, 3, and I think the one day before, and then a couple of days afterwards as well. We do communicate with them extensively about their upcoming renewal. If you're interested in that, I can get you to talk to Harold, but we do communicate with them quite extensively.
Okay. And also there's the other piece of, if some chose not to renew, but if we are still also growing, that's another piece. But we would love to potentially also have a metric on retention. So the number of new members versus retained members, like members who chose to renew. So we know how many of those are new members.
Yeah, unfortunately, our current system doesn't really allow us to do that. And we'd have to data mine. We'd actually have to do some sort of membership export every month and then compare it against, month to month. It'd be very manual. I'd love to have that. It's one of the things we're going to be looking into when we go down the association management pathway. But also, where did they get referred from? We don't have any clue at the moment. So we don't have a lot of insight into our membership. We just know that in sheer numbers, we're going up and up and up. So it's quite pleasing that it's keep on going up, but we've got to figure out the reasons why people like joining. I think it's actually been quite healthy, but as we start to rely upon this income stream, we need to also then make sure that we can rely upon it over the coming years.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. The events, again, we've talked about events quite a lot. It might be worthwhile if you have additional questions. If you didn't get a chance to read the events report, it's linked in the actual minutes. And so I would encourage you very strongly to read those if you haven't had a chance. If you have additional questions, please maybe work through Owen, so there's only one person working with the events team rather than 7. And I know Avi and Glenn, you probably have some good insights here, because I know that in particular, Avi, you helped run an AppSec EU a couple of years ago. We need to make sure it's incredibly profitable. It's not one of the ones we can take a speculative, we'd like to do this for our mission, knowing full well going into it that we may not make much money. This is not that. We need this to make money. So please, if you do want to contribute, please work with Owen, and Owen can work with the staff. Okay, just really briefly in my
I did have a question on the events though. Just really quickly.
Yep.
Kelly, remind me again, like what was the intended target number of attendees for AppSec USA? Global AppSec Virtual, sorry.
2,000,
Okay, so
a little bit over 1,300.
yeah, I was looking at, trying to remind myself the actual number, but it seems like there was a significant increase
Mhm.
between then and the area. Okay, what I didn't see in the report is notes on the upcoming events, or at least a deck like the one Andrew has made, but just for events, like for the health of them and how they're getting on, because it's right now it's a Google document. But
Yeah.
the areas that I don't see is, for example, the health of Dublin, right? And San Francisco. Like what milestones are you missing? Where are you behind? Again, the number of members that you're intending and so on, but in something that is digestible, like the deck Andrew just presented.
Yeah, again, because the team worked every hour, and I mean every hour, they were up until after midnight on a couple of nights a couple of weeks ago. I did not press them to actually get this transferred into a more visual style with the information you've just asked for. It was just impossible to ask them to do any more work. So we will work on that throughout December, and I think that's a really good improvement. But at the end of the day, it was just not possible to do this month.
That's fine, but thank you.
For Dublin, we usually get between 600 to 700 people attend our European conferences. I'm guessing 400. And that's, I think, very generous with the way COVID is going now over there. I mean, even here too with COVID, but it's going to be a tricky event. So we'll have to see.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'll speak with Owen about this afterwards and we can get back to you guys with some more information.
Yep. I just want to just keep going forward. If you've got additional questions, please, just maybe just forward them through me or through Owen, and we'll get them answered for you. You can also just post a global board and I'll get Kelly to reply. That could be a way of doing it as well. Okay, just real quick, fundraising. I'm moving forward with fundraising. We've been working to reclaim our Amazon Smile and other charity accounts like Facebook. I've reached out to make sure that the payments are going to virtual, either as a check, and then making sure the address is correct. We still have the forwarded address that we've had for a decade or more, just in case people are using old information. But it's also really important to understand if there's a way that we can actually put the correct funding details in, that they're done. But we're chipping away at the edges here. Only about $1,000 might come from this, and it's passive income. We don't have to work hard at it. We will put it into a monthly email to the members. Please use Amazon Smile. This is how you can do it. Please support us. We're going to be getting into fundraising in a big way next year. For the new board members, they're getting one of the books is called The Nonprofit Kit for Dummies. About 1/3 of it out of all of the sections is about fundraising. I would encourage you to really think about ways that we could fundraise for the foundation, because although events have been traditionally our profit center, we should also be looking as a board into ways that we could, run real fundraisers. Things like, for example, as we get into, physical conferences again, we may want to have a fundraising dinner, that sort of thing. Things that we've not done in the past that we've left on the table because we haven't focused on it. I will be bringing this up as the months go on, because this is now my #1 priority, is to make sure fundraising is front and center of what we're doing. I've talked briefly about the vendor neutrality and the partner guidelines. I'm going to push some ideas out there. I've given you what I currently do to make sure that we're vendor neutral. But fundamentally, we're getting so many offers at the moment, it's difficult to keep up with them, and it does take time. And in one case, we're going to have to run it through the lawyers to make sure that the indemnity from members misusing this doesn't affect us. So it's not a zero cost for us, and we do need to make sure that it is balanced out by additional members. Sharif?
Yeah, I had a question on something that you brought up on with the fundraising.
Yep.
And that also came from lessons learned from other institutions. One's with regards to diversity and inclusion.
Yep.
And then the other one is, well, 2 points, but I just wanted to highlight, are you working on some of, when you're working on it, do you mean like you're going to put on in the operating plan with the upcoming board specific campaigns that we would do fundraising for in 2022?
I think the operating plan will talk about a plan for fundraising, and we'll
Yep.
work with the new board to actually come up and formulate that plan. I do believe that we need to learn how to walk before we start running. And I don't want to make any missteps. If we're going to invest in this and require, you know, time or resources or funds, I don't want to just do a scattergun approach and then hope. I really want that to be, you know, directed. But I think the operating plan should only plan to plan rather than and execute something next year once the plan is complete. So the reality is I'm setting up a part of the website so that we can actually talk about our fundraising efforts, because we do things that are considered fundraising, but we don't call them fundraising. I want to bring all of those things together so people can support us.
Okay. And then giving them a reason. I think the main thing for me is giving people a reason to fund us.
Yep. That's part of the case studies. I do believe we need case studies of how people have benefited from working with OWASP and how you can support that mission.
Or can in the future, right? Or the other possibilities that may, because if we may look to the past, we may not have examples versus the potential in the future.
Yep.
Okay.
No problems. We are close on StreamYards. I have given guidance to Harold on how that might work. But I do believe this to be an operational matter. It's within my spending limit, but it's close to my spending limit. It is obviously a recurring source of expenses, and we don't have a recurring source of income for this. StreamYards have given us a 20% discount, but at the end of the day, the reality is that it's something that chapters really want, but it also costs us, you know, nearly a quarter of what Meetup costs us, and we're looking at to replace Meetup. So I haven't had a chance to look at the global board list, but if you want to chip in there, if I don't hear anything negative or positive, I'm just going to go ahead with it. We've got until December 9 to make a decision on that one. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Tom.
Hi, everybody. So I'll keep this rather brief. We're in good shape. I'm going to take the screen, just walk through a few numbers. Everybody see my screen?
Yep.
So as Andrew mentioned, we're still sitting at about $1.3 million in revenue. This is through October. The receivables are about 257. Andrew's right, about 41 of it is old, although kudos to Kelly. Sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, Kelly, but she worked it out with Cisco where we're getting paid for 3/4 of that 41 that's outstanding. So that's good news. When we look at prepaid expenses, you know, as you can see, you know, Dublin didn't have much, AppSec US didn't have much through October, but I know those are going to change. You know, our payables are about what they've been for the last, and these have been taken care of in November. What is good news, at least as far as I'm concerned, is the $500,000 we have in deferred revenue, which means we've either billed it or collected it. We just haven't recognized it yet on an accrual basis. So corporate membership, we have $223,000 that we need to recognize, as well as some that haven't been paid, and where we've had issues in the past where invoices haven't been paid for, but we've recognized and we have to take write-offs. I've changed that process for this year. I'm only recognizing what's been paid. So as an example, that Cisco, we haven't recognized any of it. When that payment comes in, either soon or early December, then we'll recognize all the way back to when it started. But we won't have to worry about write-offs going forward. As you can see, AppSec US had about 223. From what I could see looking at through today, that's up to about 300 in November. And then we've got our equity section where we've still got over $1 million worth of equity in the organization. So with that, I'll stop and see if anybody has any questions on our financial position. Okay, not hearing any. I'll get a little more granular than what Andrew had done. So this is the board's summary. So as I typically do, I like to focus on the year to date. So this is what Andrew had mentioned is through October, we're at about $77,000 to the plus. Our budget was a minus 231. Hopefully that will continue. We'll show a plus in November with the, recognizing everything for AppSec US and LASCON. I think made a little bit, but we'll see when the finals come out. For revenue, as you can see, we're ahead in conference, we're ahead in membership. And what's really driving the membership is the individual members, which we can recognize as it comes in. So individual memberships are way above budget. Corporate is a little behind budget, but that's presentation wise, not necessarily actual corporate memberships that Kelly has signed up. The 6,000 was the Google Summer of Code. We're ahead in what we had thought for donations, and as we've seen the last few months, behind in merchandise and trademarks, but to date we're up almost $119,000 over budget in recognized revenue. I'll stop there, and if anybody has any questions on the revenue side.
Yes, with regards to the corporate members, my understanding also is that there was an increase in corporate members, but also because of accrual, only 200,000 is realized now versus 2022. Is that correct?
Yes, and I've got the accrual spreadsheet. I went over it with Kelly and Andrew, and we're, I'm tracking every month as to who's paid, and then going backwards and recognizing what hadn't been recognized to date. Again, using Cisco as an example, I think we billed them in February for 25,000. I haven't recognized a penny of that yet, but we'll recognize all of it, when that payment comes in December.
Okay. But from a corporate member health perspective, are we also increasing more corporate members?
Yes, I mean, I think there's over 300,000. If you indulge me for a second, let me go pull that spreadsheet and I'll be happy to show it to you, Sharif.
I just want to jump in real fast. Cisco, I think it's going to be 37.5 if I'm not mistaken.
Right, there's a couple of invoices outstanding. The biggest one was the 25 for corporate membership, I think.
Right.
While you're pulling that up, can I just ask a quick question? And forgive me if this is a completely idiotic question, because I'm sure the accounting rules are different in the US than they are here in Israel. But it sounds like you're doing accrual basis, but actually as a cash basis, like you're not actually recognizing it until they're actually paid.
So it's a modification, Avi, just for that. Yes, you're right, and the reason is because if a corporate sponsor doesn't pay, then it doesn't affect our income.
Right. So isn't that basically cash basis?
Excuse me?
Isn't that really cash basis then?
Just for corporate memberships.
Oh, I see. Just specifically for
just specifically for
All right.
corporate memberships. That's why we call it a modification.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks
Which
for
is
that
one of the
clarification.
reasons why, Avi, this threw me off, because I was like, oh, this is sad. They didn't increase. And then it turns out No, they did, but that was this modification,
Yeah.
which is why I wanted to get this. So just for a little bit of context, we changed our corporate membership benefits somewhere in August timeframe, or just in time for the last anniversary.
No, you're right, Sharif. It was, I picked up on it in August, and I've since checked it with, with the CPAs, and I do this for a lot of clients, because a year ago, I had one client that we had a $500,000 write-off for, and I would prefer not to have us do something like that.
Yeah. And for context, we had corporate sponsors and things like that, but corporate members, I think that dwindled down to something around 7. Wasn't that right, Andrew?
Well, here, this is what I'm showing. So to date, through October, we billed $324,000 for corporate members. I've recognized 223.
Yeah.
Because we haven't been paid for the difference yet. So the budget for corporate members for the year corporate members was 200,000. So we've recognized more than that at this point. However, if you add in this corporate sponsorships, okay, which is kind of in the same line, the total for the year was 250. Through October, we've recognized 223, and we billed over 300. So Kelly and the team were basically right on budget, and they've exceeded it when we get to recognize all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Avi, just really briefly, there is an IRS rule that changed the way that you have to recognize periodic payments. And so Tom, can you just describe that IRS rule about recognition?
Sure. So we report to the IRS on an accrual basis, which means we pick up expenses when they're incurred. We recognize revenue when it's earned, right? They allow a slight modification, and we'll true up at the end of the year for recognizing based on payments just for this, okay? Because our reasoning is we don't want to pick up bad debt for recognition of sponsors or corporate members that didn't actually pay.
Yeah.
And we've had issues with that in the past. In 2018, 2019, when we did the audit, we had to pick up a bad debt reserve. So by doing it this way, it's still within the rules because we can modify just this aspect of it, and it protects OWASP's profit and loss statement from showing a loss if all of a sudden, if Dawn comes to me and goes, Tom, we need to write this off and this off and this off because they're not going to pay, which she has done, but it's not going to affect us this year because it sits on the balance sheet. It doesn't get recognized until it gets paid.
Yeah.
And again, this isn't unique. I do it with a lot of the tech clients that I oversee, and it's tended to work out fairly well for them, so long as everybody understands what we're doing. And I will apologize if I didn't explain it well enough in the past. And I'll be happy to keep answering questions anytime anybody has one.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that clarification. But that's just for recurring revenues, i.e. membership?
It's just for the corporate. So with things like the AppSec that just happened in November, right? I'm carrying that on the balance sheet. When I close November, we'll recognize all of it.
So it's also sponsorship, not just corporate membership.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for explaining that.
Just those two. And what we got the auditors to agree to is theoretically we should be doing that with corporate membership, individual memberships, but because they're basically a donation to us as a C3, they allow us to recognize it as it comes in because there's no real tangible benefits for the $50, which has made it so much easier to account for.
Yeah, and also it would have made lifetimes impossible because how much would you actually say it's worth every year? Someone is 25, are we going to, debit $3.50 this year? and someone who's in their 50s, are we going to do $25 this year?
Mhm.
It makes no sense to do it that way. And honestly, compared to CPA, I don't know what CPA fees are this year, but even our lifetime is tremendously undervalued, I think. Anyway, Grant?
2,500, Andrew, is what we pay for the 990.
No,
In a
no, I'm
non-audit.
talking CPA annual fees. Like if you're
Yeah.
a CPA, you have to pay a fee per year and keep your education up to date and stuff. My wife in Australia, she was paying around $400 and something every year just to stay an accountant.
So Grant, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, not a question, just clarification. The reason we've gone with this for corporate income is because historically we would invoice corporates as a way to encourage them to get involved in sponsorship, right? It would be, there's actually a term for it, where the invoice is not based on them having actually agreed to purchase something, but in the hopes that they will accept the invoice. Yeah. So we were doing a lot of pre-billing as a way to, hey, nice and easy, you can donate to the OWASP Foundation or you can become a corporate sponsor by simply paying this invoice. We've changed that practice as well. We're not doing it nearly as much as we were in 2018. But this is some of the historic tale of that.
Yeah.
So as you can see, I pick it up every month. And then make sure that I not only tie out to the balance sheet, but I also tie out to what we picked up. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to answer the rest of the board's questions on this, we need to be conservative about the way that we actually recognize income so that we don't overspend. When we set the budget, I think, Tom, we talked about the possibility of providing a cash basis budget so that the board can possibly more easily understand where we're going with it. But at the end of the day, I'm happy to continue doing accrual because that's what we do with the IRS. But if there's anything we can do to make it easier for the board to have that financial oversight, please let us know.
Yeah, so a lot of the groups that I work with, while they report to the IRS on an accrual basis, because the IRS wants to see true earnings, they manage on a cash basis. So we've never budgeted on a cash basis, but I'm going to take a stab at trying to come up with that. And what that will look like is what we estimate will take in for a month and what we estimate will go out for a month. Now, prepaids would be a cash reduction and go below the operating line, but it will allow you all to see your cash position and understand the $1.3 million you currently have in the bank a little better. And QuickBooks will do. There's some issues that you have to take into account, like prepaids and like accruals that QuickBooks sometimes has an issue with when they run the cash basis set of books. But I think it's time now that we at least look at it this way. So we'll continue to do what we've always done as far as accounting on an accrual basis because we have to report to the IRS. But I'm also going to try and put together a cash forecast and look at the budget on a cash basis so that you all will have a little better understanding of your cash position every month.
The other thing I'll just highlight for the people who want to get involved with the budgeting process, which at the moment is just Grant, but if you have a plan to possibly stand for the treasurer, it's a good way of getting involved in understanding our finances. Next year is an audit year, which means that we need to enter the year as cleanly as possible and run the books as cleanly as possible. So I want to make sure that we restore our balances by the end of next year, COVID pending, but the reality is that I am going to be working with Tom to make sure that we enter the year with as least amount of hangover as possible, if you like. We haven't had to need to draw down on the, I think it's 9K we've got in bad debt reserves.
Yes.
Yep. But if we need to, I'd rather take that hit this year rather than take it next year.
Yeah.
Well, we've been doing a concerted effort, Kelly and Don. They get a report every week, and I have to say from 16, 17, 18, the AR is so much cleaner than it ever was.
Yep, agreed.
So the last thing I'll mention here is the expenses. As you can see, we're way under budget in everything except, as we've talked about, G&A, which has to do with the legal fees and the issue that we had with Insperity, which I've already reached out to them to get clarity on what the fees are for 2022 as we start the budgeting. So we won't have that again. The biggest one you'll notice here of the two, events is behind because they've been doing a good job, and chapters are obviously behind because we haven't really been spending on chapters at this point. So with that, I will take any questions anybody has on any part of the finances through October. Okay, not hearing any. I'm going to turn it back over to Andrew.
Okay. The only other point of order that I'll actually say is that we had a situation this month where our rules for director absences are a little bit confusing because it's a percentage. And if you miss January's meeting, you will have to have a vote of confidence in February. I think we should probably allow up to 3 absences a year rather than a percentage, because what's happened is that one of the directors actually had a vote of confidence and obviously is still here. And I don't think that's ever going to change. And there's no reason to run another vote of confidence so close. And quite frankly, I would prefer it very, very, very much if the board could possibly consider a bylaw change for next month in relation to changing it from a percentage to a number of meetings per year.
So
Sharif.
on that note, Andrew, remind me, but we actually did something like that back in 2018 or 19, where we basically said that it's counted after the 6 months of the year. So if it's in February, it doesn't really matter. It matters basically after June, whether or not you've accumulated after
The
that.
problem is that
It's not
this
in the
actually
bylaws.
happened. Yeah, it's not in the bylaws, but it also affected a particular board member who, for very, very valid reasons, could not attend 2 meetings, and he's still under the required amount. And theoretically, if you read it literally, we would have to run another vote of confidence this month. And again, I don't think there's any chance he'd be removed. And so from my perspective, it might be really good if... Go ahead.
Sorry, Andrew. No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go on ahead. I'll come in at the end, if that's okay.
I think the current state of the bylaw is such that it doesn't achieve what its intended goal is. And it might be worthwhile thinking about a revision to that bylaw. I'm happy to lead a discussion in the global board list because I didn't put it on the minutes here, the agenda here. And it only became to light after we actually started putting it together. And because it affects the board, I think this is a board-led discussion, not an executive director-led discussion.
Okay, so I'm taking it what you're proposing potentially, right? One option is to update the bylaws to essentially say that that percentage translates into 3 meetings. So the rule would be if you miss 3 meetings, you would be put up a vote of no confidence rather than doing it by percentages and redoing it. But okay, we can figure this out on the internal board discussions because there's other conditions that might also impact this as well.
Absolutely, no worries.
Sorry, yeah. So 2 things. So if say for instance, so based on our current bylaws, if somebody has fallen through the cracks on that, we should have a vote of confidence. If the bylaws are changed in the future, that's like we still have to follow our bylaws up until the point that we change them. The second point I'd like to make is that it probably is really, really valid to amend the bylaws and to add some sort of KPIs or some sort of way to ensure that we as board members are being active. And we're like, so there's active roles, yes, and there's certain tasks for those, but as a board member at large, it clearly states in the at large that you're as you're not undertaking a active role, you're free to do projects and stuff like that. So it's about measuring the board activity within those tasks, I think, as well, that we need to ensure that the bylaws are updated to ensure that we're measuring that, I think.
Martin? Martin, you had your hand up. Did you want to raise a point there or not? Sorry.
Yes, definitely want to raise a point. I think it should not be for everybody. It can be open. I'm the one who we're talking about. The reasons were the health of my father, and that's why I didn't attend one meeting the first half of the year and other 3 like in the summer. That said, so what you get is very weird just for the conference. So the first one didn't count because there were less than 4 meetings or 6 meetings we had. So I was below the 75% and I came up again, but it wasn't voted because it was in the first period. Then it will mean that actually I've just returned to 75% in December. And that's the thing. I read the bylaws that it has been once, but of course, and Andrew says rightfully, if it has to be voted every time, then we must do so. So I totally agree with Owen that point.
So just for clarity, Martin is at 70% this month, and that's why I think this bylaw needs to be modified, because we've only recently held a vote of confidence in Martin, and I can't see a different outcome, but it's not my call. Sharif, what would you like to do?
So at the moment, I want to make sure that this is done fairly. My feeling, well, if we follow the bylaws now, it does feel like we need another vote of confidence before the bylaws are edited, are updated. Again, like
technically we need to.
Sorry?
Technically, if we go by the letter of law, we need to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We need to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so unfortunately, if you follow the letter of law, we need to do this until we change the bylaws. I don't know if a motion for this specific situation can avoid it, but also this, if we are going to do a motion, we can also just do the vote of confidence and also agree to have it resolved in the next board meeting in December. So I want to also get feedback from the rest of the board or their thoughts, because we can do both options. So.
We had to raise up.
Yeah, I just want to point out that when I read that bylaw, I found it a little bit confusing because it was a point of ambiguity.
Yes.
75% over what period, right?
Yes.
So in my opinion, on my completely non-voting opinion here, 75% can be judged annually, and there is language there that says it's annually, right? It's a bit confusing how it says there, but it is to be judged annually. So it doesn't, is it year to date? Is it calendar year? I mean, again, I'm not voting here, but there is basis to read that as by the end of the year, he needs to have been there 75%. Obviously, once you go past 3 meetings of missing, then you can't possibly get to 75% over the year. But there is a reading there that is ambiguous.
No, it says after any tabulation. We tabulate it once a month.
Okay, so I might be looking at the wrong version of that then.
Grant's pasted it into the chat.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is new business that's not in the published agenda. Do you want to go, Sharif, do you want to take back over the screen and run the new business and then maybe bring this up as an additional point?
Let's finish the discussion now, because that will also determine what we do next in the board meeting during new issues, the sort of the new items, which is right now. Honestly, like my personal opinion is, I think we should do the vote of confidence, just because where we are with the bylaws, and then commit to updating it in November in something that makes sense. Otherwise, it goes over and over again. We also don't want any favoritisms or accusations of exceptions or things like that as well for the board. But I also want to get the rest of the board's opinion if you feel that there should be an alternative, or if there's an alternative approach to this before we continue. Sorry, Grant, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so Avi's right, there is complications in there because it talks about is based upon the entire calendar year. So there is an annual component to that. I can find a reading, but it would be Bill's position to do that as the secretary. I could find a reading that would allow Martin to not have hit the drop below the 75 this month. But I think that we all kind of agree that it has, and we should, because the bylaw says that there will be a vote of confidence.
Okay, thank you, Grant. Vandana or Bill, do you have any feedback as well?
I think most of the things have already been covered, because this discussion has happened earlier also, especially while we were discussing about Martin. We actually had a discussion even before that. I remember we had these discussions. So probably it's a good idea that we close it for all, making sure that how soon we need the votes, making sure for how long. Let's say within 6 months, we have to decide that how many meetings have been attended by the board members. So all of these things probably we can modify and update in the bylaws so that it is clear for everyone.
I'll just say I was a little confused by the notion that you have to wait like half a year before you start worrying about it. Because, I mean, it does say it's tabulated based on a calendar year. So if in January you missed the meeting, that doesn't mean you've missed 100% of the things. It's based on the whole calendar year. So you've missed 1 out of 12. So you don't necessarily have to wait at all, right?
Yeah, which, Bill, is exactly why I said the reading for cancelled meetings considered attended for the purposes of the tabulation. We could also read that all future meetings are considered attended, the ones that have not been held yet. But under which calculation Martin would still, as long as we assume he's going to be with us in December, then he doesn't fall below the 75%.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I would interpret it, is that the rest of he hasn't missed future meetings. You can't miss them. They haven't happened yet.
Correct.
So they're not missed. They're considered attended, I guess, from that respect.
So by our secretary's reading, maybe we don't need a vote of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I interpret that to mean, is that you can't miss future meetings. You can only miss them if the meeting happens and then you miss it. So I think for tabulation purposes, it's only the meetings you've actually missed, and it's based on, so in January, if you missed January, you would have missed 1 out of 12, not 12 out of 12. Does that make sense?
Is that not explicitly what it means by the tabulation is based on upon the entire calendar year?
That's what I interpret it to mean. Yeah. I mean, why would you interpret it? I mean, otherwise you wouldn't have to have that line in there. Otherwise you would just tabulate it based on actual attended meetings. So 3 meetings in, it's like you missed 1 out of 3. That's 33% that you've missed, right? But it's not that way. It's like if you missed 3 meetings, then you missed 3 out of 12.
I think it's even that if you miss 3 meetings, then you cannot get up to 75% based on the calendar year.
So if you miss the first 3, yes, then a vote of confidence definitely needs to be called. And yeah, if you've missed the first 3 months, you probably don't really want to be on the board if you can't find a way to do this.
Well, I mean, if you miss 3, that's at the 75% mark. I guess it depends on, does it have to be 75.1% or is it 74.9%? Right? Like, I don't know.
No less than 75%.
So
Yeah, no less. Well, then, yeah, so then you can miss 3 and still be okay. in a
The
year.
other thing is that essentially scheduled meeting doesn't necessarily include special meetings, which are called. And I think this needs to be tidied up. No matter what you decide today, this needs to be tidied up.
Well, I mean, if a meeting's, I mean, I don't know, do we have unscheduled meetings?
You don't have unscheduled meetings, but you do actually have scheduled executive sessions, which are special meetings under the bylaws, and they apparently count towards attendance.
Yeah, I think so too. So then that means if the board sets up like another 4 or 5 of those special sessions, then those count towards your total.
Just purely because of the optics of this, either we vote because we're worried that our membership is going to think that we as the board decided to ignore the bylaws, or we don't vote because there's no reason to, because our reading of the bylaws say that Martin is going to meet the 75% requirement.
Having gone through, and I'm guessing you can see my screen. I'm sharing this here, so I'm full.
Mhm.
So I brought this up with Andrew because I do remember us updating it specifically for that same problem. We didn't want someone at the beginning of the year missing it, so it's considered 100%, well, 0% attendance, and having that issue. And so it looks like this was updated, or when it was drafted with the idea, with that in mind. And as a result, we said based upon the entire calendar year. So my mind is that I think we don't necessarily need to do a vote of confidence. I think that was potentially a bylaw that was inartfully drafted so that it left room for misinterpretation. In fact, I believe Andrew was there at the time of us drafting, and as the ED also, I think we got it a little bit wrong. I think we can not run a vote of confidence because based on the bylaws and based on its tabulation on the entire calendar year, and the spirit of the intent here is that we do have an active board member, a pretty dedicated board member at that. There wouldn't necessarily mean that both via interpretation and spirit of the intent, it doesn't meet that criteria. But what we've identified is that this section in the bylaws may require an update so that it is a little bit more explicit and meets the spirit of our intent.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Andrew's request that we update the bylaws, I think it's a good idea. And I'll just simply add that the legal system, when the courts are interpreting laws that are ambiguous and it's not clear exactly what they mean, it could be interpreted in 2 different ways. One of the signals they use is they go back to the language published around the time that the law was passed and look what the lawmakers, what their intentions and spirit of the law was intended to do, and use that to help guide them to interpret the law. And I think that's exactly what we need to do, which is, what was the entire intention of this whole section? It's to ensure that someone is at least 75% present at our meetings throughout the entire year. We're not holding them to 75% after every single meeting, but rather the entire year. So Martin has certainly demonstrated that. I think we can interpret it that way very safely. And I think we don't need any sort of vote of confidence. Like, we can just move on and put something on next month's calendar that says, hey, let's update the bylaws and have some drafted language for that.
Yeah, that sounds like a good way of doing it.
Happy to support
Question
that
on
too,
accounting, when we have like in-person meetings at a conference, right? Will be several days worth of meetings. Does that count as 1 or 1 per day, or?
No, there's a separate requirement, I think, for in-person meeting, but the attendance is specific on board meetings, and I think we do set up a board meeting around that time.
Yep.
That sort of.
We require you to spend 72 hours in a room with us, Harvey, or at least 90% of the 72 hours a room in a 3-day conference.
No, you're required to spend 72 hours in a room with me.
So, To answer your specific question, Avi, we need to publish meeting 7 days in advance, and they need to be publicly posted. It's not just something you can just make up. And that stops, for example, the board prep calls being used to overturn the will of the board by the fact that there are 4 people there who could potentially vote. They're not a published meeting. So you can have informal meetings with the rest of the board, discuss everything you like, but to actually be valid, it needs to be a published meeting, either a special meeting or a general meeting.
Yeah, no coups allowed.
That's right.
Well,
No secret
allowed,
cabal.
you're allowed to have coups, but you have to do them publicly and with lots of advance notice. Don't get any ideas though.
No forming any cabals.
So briefly talking about that, Avi, I will work with you to make sure that I don't impede, when we set up the calendar of board meetings next year, I'll make sure I don't impede any holidays for you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm done. I think we're done here as well, but that's up to you.
Right. So moving on to new businesses. So thank you, everyone. So moving on to new businesses. So the first motion is motion to approve a new OWASP Foundation mission statement. This is sponsored by Grant and seconded by Bill Corey. I'll have the mission statement that is being proposed up. Okay, so Grant, would you like to walk us through this and open up for discussion?
Sure. Before I do, Martin has a question.
Oh.
Is it about this, Martin, or something else?
Oh, I was waiting for, I just want to be early. Go ahead.
Okay, so fundamentally, the problem is that we have to put on our 990, our mission, and then we have to show the IRS that we are spending against our mission. That's where this first started. Then when I went to go and look at what exactly our mission was, it seems that that's been a very nebulous thing. It looks like EDs have changed the mission of the foundation, or the board has changed the mission of the foundation without that ever being written up or discussed or described or actually properly thought through. So Andrew mentioned one of the books that the new board are going to be receiving joining the board. I borrowed his copy virtually and used that to extract some information about how you go about putting together a mission statement. There has been a lot of discussion on this document, a lot of back and forth, a lot of really good input from a lot of our members. Much of it has gone into to the changes that are in here, except for the random changes that Sharish is now making because he wants capitals at the beginning of the lines.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, distracted. You know, I literally have to make them lowercase because it's semicolons, not full stops.
There were bulletin points. I apologize.
And Word agrees with you, and I have to go and change it because it automatically capitalizes. Anyway, leave it. It's good. But TLDR on this is that this is kind of where I got to. My thinking with as much of the community as who were willing at this point to get involved in the conversation. Clearly, there's still more conversation to be had. There are a lot of good ideas that have come out, especially in the last couple of days. There's some discussion in there that you can see with Glenn. And I'd like this to become a mission. Did we literally lose Glenn as I said that? Damn it. Oh, no, we didn't. He's there.
I'm still here. Yeah.
Somebody disappeared and I lost everything shuffled people around. And Glenn's point here is a really good one. And there was actually some conversation with Jeff around how this should happen. And I'd like this to become something we take on as a project next year. But I'd like to update it now so that we can put it on our 990 now that this is what we're doing, because this is what we're doing, right? This is effectively what we're currently doing. At least the second part where the details of the mission are drawn out. So if the board has any questions for me at this point, I'm happy to take them. Martin?
Yeah, my first question was that I couldn't get the right feeling on it. I looked at it in the discussions in the beginning. It was, how much do you think that the involvement of the community was? Do you think it's a community, a mission statement that is carried and supported by the community or not?
So it's difficult to say because I mean, you can go back and look at all the edits, and you can go back and look at all the conversations that happened in there. And there's a lot of voices that were heard, but it's a lot of voices for a document. But of the 5,000 members, not even 1% have said something here, right? So, and nowhere near hundreds. So
It's not, there will not be 80% or 60% or 50%, but just in general, those who are active are always lower than numbers. Just from the active community, you think that this will reflect the opinion of the active community, let's say.
I think that this at least is not offensive to our active community and echoes what we actually do. But I believe that we probably want to make this a project where we try and get much more community involvement. We spent months on this. You know, the first draft went out, I don't know, 8 months ago.
Yeah, and there have been several callings to the community, right, on the mailing list to be participating.
Yeah, and there's been conversation on the mailing list about it, right? So people have been communicating, have been talking.
Thanks.
Owen?
Hey, I'm just wondering, based on the current version and the version that you're looking to bring in, has that gone to the community as an update? This is where we're at, and this will be voted on in this board meeting. Or I'm just wondering, because there's been call for action, but has there been a call for, say, for instance, everybody to say, I have no objections to how we're proposing to bring it forward?
No, I haven't been able to get that level of comms out. Literally, the last conversations happened today on this.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking, based on what we said about the community and stuff like that, people have been involved, and they're generally the people that will be involved, because they are those active members. But there are still people that they may not be as active as in getting involved in things, but they would still like to see it and potentially bring up something in the event that they disagree with
Absolutely,
the direction we're going.
And that's why I'd like post this to still have a project for this year, to have that kind of communication with the community, bearing in mind that our mission has changed literally without even necessarily the board being involved in that process historically, right? So this is by far the greatest community input into the OWASP mission statement that has happened, to my knowledge, and to Andrew's knowledge.
To mine. Yeah, that's true.
So I don't think it's perfect. I do think that we need to vote on this now. I think there's no secret here that I'm definitely voting for it. But I don't think our mission is going to be set in stone, and I'm quite happy to support the efforts of getting much more community involvement in, and particularly Jeff's suggestion, like, we come up with a vision, let the community find 100 ways to solve that mission. Right now we have these things, this is what we're doing. Whether these things are effective is a question that Jeff posed, and rightly or wrongly, but I think that level of discussion probably still needs to happen, and I'd like to see that happen next year, and hopefully I can convince Glenn to pick it up as one of his missions.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say that I think ideally we would, on an annual basis, review our mission statement. One, to make sure we're aligned with it, we're doing all the right things, and if we're not, we should get aligned to it. But two, maybe our focus has changed slightly and we want to tweak it. It's not a written in stone thing. We can change it twice a year, 10 times a year. I'm just thinking annually it'd be good that we reviewed it. And so we have to start somewhere. I think this has a lot of effort that's been put into it. I don't know that it's the most perfect mission statement. I actually have some comments in there, but I couldn't think of anything better at the time. So I think we just push forward. I think this is a pretty good spot. And then we'll just annually, we can just keep updating it.
I totally agree and concur that. I heard today a very nice statement was, you can't edit an empty page. So definitely it's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any further hands raised, so if the discussions are complete, we can go for a vote. Okay, so in order of sites, Owen Pendlebury,
Yep.
Martin,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Vandana,
Yes.
and Jubin isn't here, and it's a yes for myself as well.
Thank you.
In the past, sometimes we did also a shadow vote, how we want to call it, by the new board members who are present, so understand their opinion.
Proxy vote, but I do not recall seeing Jubin providing ahead of time.
No,
No, Sharif, not a proxy vote, a shadow vote to allow Avi and Glenn, even though their votes
Oh, okay.
effective.
thanks, Grant.
Thank you.
It's going to be my responsibility to translate next year with Owen leaving the board. I have to learn
yeah.
fast.
I was literally just about to text Martin that. I thought I'd be interrupting by saying it, but yeah.
Sheriff will be
There
gone
you go.
next year. There's no translation needed.
We'll see about
You'll
that.
still find lots of translations. Grant, I'm glad you're taking up the mantle.
Thanks, Owen. You've set a high bar. So Sharif, you're going to call for a shadow vote or not?
Yes. So firstly, Glenn,
Yes.
Avi.
I will actually abstain.
Okay.
For reasons I'm happy to write with to Grant or continue the conversation with Grant later.
Thanks, Avi.
Thanks, everyone. Okay. So the motion has passed, and we can move on to the second motion, which is to remove the 6-month leadership requirement for complementary membership. This again sponsored by Grant and seconded by Bill. So Grant, would you like to begin the discussions?
Absolutely. So this is, we offer complimentary memberships for leaders. The complications around keeping track of how long they've been leaders means that there's a lot of effort on the foundation staff to determine that. The intent here was to not prevent anyone from choosing to lead a project. It was to allow anyone who wanted to be part of the organization and to lead some part of the organization to do so, while at the same time requiring them to subscribe to our membership values, which means they would have to be a member. Otherwise, they're not accountable to OWASP in any way, shape, or form. So the intent was that leaders would be members by virtue of the fact that they were leaders, because it would allow them to be members and allow them to be part of what OWASP does. The 6-month limitation there was to show that they were intending to be leaders. They had a real intent to do something for real. But I think that the benefit of that, if somebody goes through the process of setting up a project or taking on a project versus the cost of the foundation in trying to keep track of how long someone's led a project before giving them their membership, just seems ridiculous to me. And it is a burden on the staff's time. Martin.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then there's a question of what is an active leader, and everything. So it's not manageable. Same problem. I think generally everybody knows that I'm actually against those complementary memberships, because it makes no sense. You remember not we have all the discounts for people who have come up from other areas where the money is worth more and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I rather would like to see that gone, but then we need a bigger part that we had in the past with other memberships. So definitely I agree that it's not manageable from very few. I think it's time to clean up our leader membership part of that. this ambiguous language in it.
Thank you, Martin. Any other questions, comments?
I did have a comment. Sorry, for whatever reason, I'm now having problems actually raising hand ads because I'm sharing the screen. So run this by me just again really quickly. So if somebody, for example, wants to get a free membership, so that's the deliberate intent more than anything, right? They would still need to become a leader, right? So that either start a project or they would need to lead a chapter, right?
Mhm.
And for those, there are anyway various controls in any case on the requirements, so that, for example, if they don't host any chapters or they do not contribute, they also can be removed from their membership, correct?
Yeah, so that's built into the projects committee and the chapters committee, the rules around what remains an active project, what remains an active chapter. But yes.
Okay. And in any case, complimentary membership is still there. It's still here. It's more of a matter of, I guess the spirit of the intent here is also the reduction of operational overhead with regards to this. It's
Exactly.
Are you a project leader and so forth? Okay, well, are you a paid member? Yes or no? Do you want to apply for complimentary membership? And then you do it.
Yeah. And the reason for the complimentary membership, just to remind the board again, is because otherwise we can have chapter and project leaders that don't have to abide by the OWASP rules of engagement, right? They don't have to follow our rules of conduct or anything like that because they're not members. There is no connection to them from the foundation's perspective. So that's the only reason that complimentary membership, I feel all leaders should be members. Like Martin, I also feel that all leaders probably should be paid members because they want to help the foundation, but that's a separate issue.
Okay, so that ties one loophole, which is the area, but does that also require existing leaders to become members at some point in the future?
No.
Okay. Does it state that project leaders, sorry, the other bylaws, sorry, the other policies or processes, do they actually state that in order to become a chapter lead, you can become a chapter leader or you can become a project leader, but within the first couple of months, you have to become a OWASP member?
So right now, I think both say you can apply for complimentary membership, but the wording on those should change to you should apply for membership through one route or the other. But all this change here, Sharif, is about removing the requirement for you to have been a leader for 6 months before we allow you to accept complimentary membership.
Yeah, and that's fine. What I was going with this is not to put in a roadblock to this. I think it's good. It's more of to understand we probably have some work to do.
Yes,
in the other areas to make sure that this is airtight, because otherwise you still have the problem, which is you have chapter leaders or project leaders that are not complying and they have not signed any of the OWASP membership agreements.
Yeah, exactly. And that needs to happen. Chapters, projects, committees,
So
all of them, right?
So one of the things that we've historically done is because we were a membership organization before we had members, we haven't historically enforced it. I do think there's a very good argument that leaders should be members, but you can't simply say, okay, you're the project leader of ZAP, therefore you're a member now. You can't just do that. People need to actually sign up for it. But the reality is this is just simply making it operationally aligned with what we actually do today, which is it's just really hard for us to actually work out, have you been a leader for a sufficient amount of time to get a complimentary membership? As we search for association management software, we need to have simpler rules to allow more products to be viable candidates. So we don't end up with the problem we have with Fontiva, which is every time we needed a change to cover off our custom rules, we had to pay Fontiva a fair amount of money to get that actually implemented. This makes it simpler for us today and will actually allow us to go forward and choose more pieces of software to be potential candidates for a replacement.
And it fits with the intent of the complementary membership in the first place. But Sharif, you're right. There is work to be done around ensuring that all leaders are members. Because it's ridiculous that you spend your personal time working on a project and then have no say in how that project gets used and how the foundation runs that manages that project effectively.
Yeah.
You should be able to do that.
It ended up with a really strange situation where the ZAP project won an award for best project. And because it's a member award, but one of the project leaders was not a member, it was strange that we were able to recognize 2 of the members, but not the third and most active leader. This would be a good thing for the board to work on and encourage leaders to pick up either paid or complimentary membership.
My God, so, all right, so that's why that's member wasn't on the
It's
list.
weird, right?
Yes. Oh my God. All right, okay.
If I may, just at that point, I think it's not weird. It's a consequence to his own choice. So I don't think it's weird. It's weird that the person you're referring to, is not a leader, but that we can appreciate his membership is because he's not a member. So it's his choice. So I think that's just make sure that not we're mingling up to things, right?
But
I'm against this choice. I'm not supporting his choice, but we can't be like, oh, we cannot appreciate his membership because he's not a member. No, we cannot appreciate his involvement as a member because he is not a member. I think it's something completely different.
So we're going to probably, and it's probably a thing to talk about for next year, the WASP Awards, if we're going to have a best project, we're going to have to award it to the entire project or not individually recognize projects. That's a different discussion for a different day. I think there's very valid arguments for leaders to be members of whatever sort, but that's not what this motion's about. It's literally deleting some words.
Yeah, don't worry, Andrew. We're going to go for a vote in a second. It's more that getting some emphasis. There is some points that Martin made. I think the other piece is there's a spirit of the intent, and this is the last thing I'll just mention here, which is in other organizations, there are very limited barriers for you to join a project and contribute and participate. The membership, like if I look at OpenSSF or the Linux Foundation, their membership, and they're completely different. Obviously, they have corporate boards. That's the reason why it's done this way. But the thing here is that we are a member organization. That means that we're independent from that type of corporate involvement. But that also means that we depend on individual members. It sometimes gets in the way of their contributions and us recognizing their contributions. So I think there is a room for complementary membership, but as long as that contribution is recognized. In any case, can I just double check? Are there any other raised hands for this issue, this motion? No. Okay, again, from order of sight, we'll begin the vote for the motion to remove the 6-month membership requirement for complementary membership. That was a mouthful. Martin.
Yes.
Okay. Brent.
Yes.
Owen.
Yep.
Bill.
Yes.
And that is a yes for myself as well.
And
Banana?
You forgot me.
Oh my God. Sorry, Bandana.
Yes.
Yes, I was actually going to ask Grant if you want to also raise for a shadow vote for the upcoming board members or not.
Yeah, I think we should allow them the option here. I can't
Okay.
imagine that.
Avi,
Yes.
Glenn.
Yes.
Okay, the motion has passed. So thank you, everyone. Apologies, Vandana, deeply.
I appreciate that. That was actually an interesting one because with Jubin not being here, this is a bylaw change and therefore it would have required a supermajority and it would have been interesting without Vandana's vote. So thank you, Vandana.
And I can see why you were anxious. Okay. All right. Any additional discussions or comments? No? Okay. So next I motion to adjourn the board meeting.
Second.
Thank you, Martin. Okay, thank you, everyone. See you next month.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks. Have a good one.
Avi, just
Bye-bye.
1 second before you leave.